principles that we learned in Authentic Man of God is to lead courageously. And we were very fortunate throughout our 24-week study to have one who led us courageously, which included getting up at about 4:30 every Thursday morning to make sure he was there to lead us. So I'm going to let Don Harper come now and kick off our ceremony. Guys, those of us who went through the study, I know we thanked him privately on Thursday, but let's thank him again publicly. Thank you.
A lot of those Thursday mornings, I did not have a great attitude when I first got up and it was 4:20 and not 4:30, Pastor. And some of the escapades included hitting a bear one morning. And then when I got here, one of the guys asked me, was the bear okay? I said, I don't have a clue. I really didn't care whether that bear was okay or not. What a great opportunity for this study. This is really my third time going through it. I went through it in 2008 with a lot of men here at Utica. And then I had a lady that asked me to take her husband through it since he missed the first session. I don't know why he missed it, but she asked me would I do that, and I went to Lila Doyle for 24 Wednesdays. I took a television set in for 24 weeks at about 6:30 in the morning. And Bruce and I went through this series together. And the amazing thing is no one ever questioned me taking a TV in on a Wednesday morning, and nobody ever questioned me about taking one out. But the main thing I want to say to you is that we accomplished that. Bruce and I were able to do that one-on-one. And one of the challenges that we will have for our men tonight is those of you that have not gone through this study, each one of these men that will come across this stage tonight are capable of leading you and working with you and mentoring you as you go through this program, especially now since we have the availability with this being on Right Now Media. You don't have to take a TV into Lila Doyle. You can have someone to actually watch it, and then one of the men can actually take you through the questions, because the accountability of this process requires that you go through the question with someone. It would be better to go through in a larger group, but without that, you can do it one-on-one with another individual. We've been blessed. I don't know who began this process, probably Tom Russ, and someone here in 2007, 2008, had the vision to ask permission to buy these series of DVDs. Dr. Lewis is an exceptional teacher, and one of the easiest jobs I had of facilitating was to get there on time and then get the television to work, and then to bring the expert into the room, turn on the television and let him teach us for 45 to 50 minutes. And the process worked that way, and then after the television went off after 50 minutes, then there were men that were assigned to 4 or 5 in a group where they talked about questions that came up about this series. And I shared with the group. I was fortunate enough to be in a group with, let me tell you about these fellows. Albert, in 2007, 2008, Albert Kendrick, David Hooper, Lloyd Pruitt, Bobby Price, Alan Meyer sometimes until we kicked him out, and Jay Farmer, because Jay was doing the evening session, but every once in a while he'd had to come to the morning session. He chose to sit with us. And those group of men, for 24 weeks, we became great friends. We're still great friends. And I probably would have never met Albert Kendrick in this church, no matter what kind of process you have, unless you had a system to put us in a place where we had to discuss tough subjects. I told Pastor Ryan that there were some mornings when Robert Lewis was talking about a subject, and I looked over those 2 or 3 questions. I didn't want to talk about that with anybody. I had never talked about that with anybody. But when that television went off, you had to turn around and deal with those 3 or 4 questions with people, and it showed us that we can do that. And the joy that I had as a facilitator for this one is watching, first of all, to set up the groups, and then to watch how those groups interacted while after that TV DVD went off. But Jim Hayes asked me to remind you that this is just one facet of the men's ministry. The men's ministry, as Pastor said, we are blessed here at this church. We've got a great men's ministry. They meet on a weekly basis every Tuesday at 7 o'clock in the morning. They do that for devotions as well as meals, and they fellowship. They do it on Saturday at 8 o'clock every week. And the group that we were in, Albert and I once we finished our series, we decided we were going to start the breakfast. So we started the Thursday morning breakfast the first Thursday of every month. And that is still going on. So men, there are places that you can be and go on a weekly basis to be encouraged by other men and also be challenged by other men. Today we're going to be celebrating the graduation of 32 people. One of the things I love is there are some fathers and sons in this process, and you'll see them. The part of that is that they came and they were taught together. They were not in the same groups. And Bruce and I Bruce did the facilitation with our young men. We had a table of young men that you'll see. But these 32 graduates today are going to be receiving a certificate. They're going to be receiving this certificate. And what this certificate says is that Utica Baptist Church, Authentic Man of God, the certificate of successful completion presented to and by name. And it talks about that role that Pastor mentioned. He rejects passivity, accepts responsibility, leads courageously, and expects God greater reward. The reason why we wanted to put this in a certificate is because we want it out where people can see it, because we are held accountable for the kind of men that we are. And so there are 10 statements on this. It said an authentic man of God is following a godly pattern when, number one, he accepts the call of God on his life, and he openly shares his testimony. That's what Pastor was talking about this morning, wasn't it? Openly shares his testimony about his salvation, John 3:16. That's engaging, enjoying, and then encouraging. So if this is out in plain sight for family and others to see, every once in a while you ought to go by it and say, Dave, how are you doing on number one? Because that's the accountability that we want to have as a part of this process. It ought to be out someplace where it can be seen, and then those that love you would say, how are you doing on number 4 and number 5? We're going to be doing that as a group. Number 10 on here is one of my favorites because it says, he prays that God will provide the wife God has prepared and chosen for him, and then he loves her as God describes in Scripture, Ephesians 5:25. So I ought to be asking someone, how are you doing on number 10? And how are you doing with that? So that's the accountability that we'll have as a part of this process when we give the certificates out, and you'll help to hold them accountable. The other thing that they'll get today is a keychain. I got one in 2008, and I wore mine out because this keychain has the 4 components of how to be an authentic man of God. It talks about rejecting passivity. He accepts responsibility, he leads courageously, and he expects God's greater reward. I can't tell you how many times I pulled this out and talked about it and used it as an object lesson as I taught and talked to someone about how do you become an authentic man of God. I told Pastor I used it so much that the little panel came off and I lost my part of that, so all I got now is the flap that's on the back. But I'm going to get another one today as a part of this process. So what do we want you to do as a part of this process is to help hold us accountable. This is a venture that started in February of 2017, and we went 6 weeks at a time and learned lessons. And the reason why we wanted to take a gap in this rather than go 24 weeks in a row is so people could implement, and so they could process some things, so they could practice some things. And I think we challenged them, especially the husbands, to practice some of these things that they were learning on their spouses. And so we would do 6 weeks, and we would take off maybe 6 or 8 weeks, and then we would do another 6 weeks. So it took us about 14 months to complete the process. And I believe the men will tell us that it probably worked the best that way, so that we weren't trying to do it all in 24 consecutive weeks. So it's been a great process. It was a lot of fun, all except for getting up at 4:20 on Thursday mornings. But other than that, it was a great process, and really encourage you. And I will challenge you once again before I turn this over to Pastor. Every man that you'll see that walks across the stage today is capable of leading another. That means a brother, that means a son, that means a son-in-law. That means any man in your life, young or old, because there's some young men that's going to get certificates today. You can go through this process one-on-one by using Right Now Media. We'll supply you. I'm sure that I can speak for Jim, is that we'll help you to supply you this book. This is your workbook. And as you watch the video, then you can write down the answers, and then that's when you get on the phone with one of us, one of these graduates, and said, I've finished lesson number 4. Can you go through the questions with me? That's the accountability that part of this process. So we don't have to wait for another formal program that Pastor and them would ask us to be involved in. We can do this. And I would challenge you that if hopefully some of you are nudging the person beside you saying you want to start this program, you can do that. Y'all are not awake tonight. Are y'all okay tonight? Well, those are all the comments that I have leading up to this. I'll turn it over to Pastor, and then he can proceed from here as to how we go forward from here. But it's been an honor to be a part of this, and we are so thankful that our church has the foresight that we will do a program like this. Thank you, Pastor.
All right, I just want to let you see visually those 4 components that Don was talking about, the things that we've been learning all throughout this study. The first component, authentic men reject passivity. I'll tell you up front, this is the one that has been the most important for me, and the one that the Lord is still using to continue to shape me into an authentic man of God, because my temptation is to lead well while I'm here and then get in the car and drive to 3055 Forest Drive and be passive. And so as an authentic man of God, I have to reject that. I have to remind myself that it is far more important for me to lead my family and to lead my wife and love my wife well than it is even to lead this church. And so I'm continuing to be reminded and challenged by that component of rejecting passivity. Authentic men also accept responsibility. We have to understand that God has called us to be leaders. He's called us to lead in our marriages, lead as fathers, lead as workers in this church. One of the things that I would be remiss not to tell you is that we're missing a few guys tonight because they have accepted responsibility and they're out doing other things tonight that God has called them to do. We have one graduate who got in the car after church tonight, after church this morning, and drove home to be with his mother, who is very sick. We have another graduate who is spending time with his family. His son has a birthday tonight, and he recognizes that's an important milestone in his son's life. We have one past graduate who is tonight leading a small group in his community. He's leading courageously in that. And we have another one who is in Florida this morning, this evening, because he's being the son that God has called him to be. We have responsibilities in so many different areas, and authentic men accept those responsibilities and follow through on those things. Reject passivity, accept responsibility, lead courageously. Leading is never, I wouldn't say it's never fun. Leading is often fun, but it is often challenging. Whether you are leading an organization, a church, a family, an individual. And so we have to continue to lead courageously. And the reason that we're willing to do those first 3, the reason that we are motivated to do those first 3 is because we expect the greater reward. We expect God's reward. We realize that if we will do the things that He's called us to do, many times what tempts us to reject those first 3 things and do opposite of what God has called us to do is because we think there's some immediate payoff. You know, for me, when I get in the car and go home, the immediate payoff of being passive might be, well, I get to sit down in my chair and watch a show and rest and kind of just relax a little bit. There would be some reward in that. But as authentic men, we expect a greater reward. We know that if we will do the things that God has called us to do, then we will have a greater reward than that. Like I said, in just a moment, I want to open it up and allow some of you to share some insights that you've gleaned throughout this process. I think I forgot to mention, you may have been a past graduate who has gone through in a previous group, and maybe you just want to add a few words about how this course has affected you and how you continue to grow. But I want to share three quick things just that I learned personally, three very specific things. Men, I want to encourage you. I told my small group this on Thursday as we met for the last time together, but I want to encourage you to keep your book handy, and every once in a while flip back through this book, because even more than the bullet points and the numbered principles that are going to be on your certificate, I get challenged regularly by remembering what the Lord, how He spoke to me and impacted me in that moment, the things that I wrote down during that lesson. So I want to share three of those with you just very, very briefly. In session 2, we looked at manhood's 4 faces. Robert Lewis shared with us that a man who is well-balanced will exhibit 4 different faces. There is face number 1, which is the face of the king. This face reflects righteous energy, has strong convictions, a servant spirit, and righteous leadership. Face number 2 is the face of the warrior. This is a face reflecting conquering energy. This face has initiative and is protecting and providing. Face number 3 is the face of the lover. This is a face reflecting romantic energy, a face characterized by tenderness and sensitivity and sacrificial care. And then face number 4 is the face of the friend. This face reflects connecting and is characterized by loyalty and accountability and challenge. And I couldn't help but kind of giggle. You might have seen that when I was reading those out. Now, we haven't practiced this before, but out of those 3 faces, which is the one that I need to work on? She's going to pass on that one. But I'm going to tell you what I need to work on. I've got to work on the face of the lover with the romantic energy and being tender and sensitive, recognizing that my wife's, her love language is not necessarily the same as mine. And so I need to communicate with her and love her well in the way that God has built her. And I'm working on that. I think I've made some improvement in that area, but I still have a long way to go. But the Lord is showing that to me. Another thing that has really made a big impact on me, Don was talking about leading other people through this in the future. I'm excited about leading my children through this, and especially my boys. Samuel just turned 13, and I'm looking forward to leading him through that. One of the things that we learned in session 5, what is it that every son wants and needs from his father? And the 5th one of the things that we looked at is they need their dad's heart. There are 3 things that our children need to hear from us dads on a regular basis. They need to hear us say, I love you, I'm proud of you, and you're good at, and fill in the blank. Robert Lewis showed us that even Jesus, the Son, received that from his Father. In that moment of his baptism where the voice spoke from above and said, this is my Son with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. And so that was God said, this is my beloved Son. I love you, Jesus, with whom I am well pleased. I'm proud of you. And when he told everybody else, listen to him, he was saying, he's good at teaching. He has a word to share with you. And so I'm doing my best to put those into practice in my personal life. The last thing I wanted to share was just one thing that I gleaned specifically for ministry. We were in, let me see what session that was in. In session 15, we were beginning to look to the book of Genesis to kind of paint the picture of biblical manhood. And we were looking at Adam and Genesis 1 and 2, and one of the things that I wrote down, one of the points that we were being taught is that Genesis 1 hints at a very important social structure. And Robert Lewis read Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. These are very familiar verses to you, but it says, God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens, over the livestock and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Now, we've heard that before, but Robert just pointed out again, keep in mind that in this passage, the word man is used collectively for both male and female. God created man in his image, male and female, he created them. And so Robert challenged us, men, just to be reminded that demonstrates the kind of leadership and representation that God is expecting from us. Now, as it relates to my ministry, I had one of those aha moments that in that session, I shared this with Don right after the session was over, but I have not done a lot of weddings in my ministry. It's been very interesting that I've been a pastor now for about 15 years and have probably done less than 10 weddings. But in the past, when we're going through premarital counseling and we're working through the order of service, in the past, I get down to that last part of the service and I say, after you've kissed the bride and I've pronounced you husband and wife, how do you want me to introduce you to the congregation? Do you want to be first name, last name for both of you or what? But I said after this session, from now on, I will teach it ahead of time, but then I will use that moment to remind the man that God has called you to be the leader. And that's why we say, I now present to you Mr. and Mrs. Ryan Goodroe. And so that was just a ministry aha moment. God has used this course in powerful ways in my life, both personally and professionally, and I'm very grateful for it. Who else would like to share a few words about what you've learned from Authentic Men? Bruce? I'll tell you what, let's do. For sake of time, I'm going to move down to the bottom here, and we'll just do all the speaking from the floor here.
Good evening. For me, Don mentioned that he sat down with me one-on-one for, collectively 24 weeks. The reason that I went through it, I don't know how many of you remember, but my son had shot himself in the foot. What was so important, literally? He had slipped with a shotgun. I was on a mission trip in Peru. Came back, that was a 40-hour day. But I was awake for 40 hours straight. But anyway, for me, my wife had approached Don because she knew that I had started this course. I think we went to the first session maybe here at church, and then we went through it. And then this happened. The reason she approached Don was because she knew that this course was going to mean something to me. For me, I grew up without a dad. I had no definition of what a man was. I had observed, I grew up at Return Baptist Church. I saw many figures, many men to follow in patterns of how they lived. I got an idea. Different men became my fathers, my father images. But nowhere had I defined precisely what a man is, or as we have learned in this course, or I have learned prior and reheard it again and helped to facilitate with some young men that I sat at the table with, 4 young men, 3 in the end, what an authentic man of God is. And the greatest thing for me was seeing, first going through the course with Don, one-on-one. God knew what I needed. That's why I think he allowed my son to shoot himself in the foot. He's doing just fine now. He hobbles a little bit, but it's kind of like a blessing, with I guess it was Jacob, I believe, that wrestled with the Lord, and he touched his hip, and he limped the rest of his life. And every time he limped, oh, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Well, by that happening, I was able to get a personal relationship with a man. That's why I call Don Papa Don. If you hear me call and talk to him, I say Papa. And a few people do that, but I call him for real as Papa. Because I didn't have a man figure in my life. I had my grandfather, but he passed away, not too much longer after my high school years. And never really connected with him. And so Don gave me that good personal relationship in a manhood and helped me identify what a true man is. And then for me to be able to go in turn with following courses and to be able to meet other men talk about things that you don't want to talk about. I did not want to talk about some of the things we talked about, neither would Don, but we talked about them. And I learned it's okay to be transparent. God wants us to be transparent and to hold accountability with other men, with other Christians, especially men to men. And then when I got the opportunity to, in turn, sit with some young men at a table, William, Daniel, Michael, all three of them are here tonight. Originally, another Michael. It was a blessing for me to be able to look them in the eye and try to be as sincere as I could about warning them to some degree while instructing them in what Robert Lewis had instructed us about, what things in life to be careful with, and tell them I'm an example. Oh, I'm doing fine now, but there was a struggle, big struggle in my life because of things that happened because of my insecurities and not defining what a real man is. And I challenged them to walk with the Lord in all you do and follow him, and you'll do right. You'll do rightly in his eyes, and you'll have a life that's not going to necessarily be comfortable all the time, but it's sure going to be joyful and rewarding inside. And you're going to be secure in who you are and learn what it means to reject passivity, accept responsibility, to lead courageously, and look forward to the reward that God offers us. All those things are sequential. You do one, you're going to get the other. I don't do it perfect, that's for sure. People here know that. But I tell you what, I will walk as best as I can walk, as intently as I can walk, whether I mess up or not, and follow the Lord and be an authentic man of God.
Thank you, Bruce. Ben Johnson, back right corner of the room.
I won't be too long. We've got a basketball game to watch in a little bit. But no, I really didn't know what to expect in starting this study. I initially agreed to come because I really respect Don, and I figured if he thought it was good, it's worth checking out. And then when I showed up to the first session, I heard there was going to be Krispy Kreme, and I kept on coming back week after week, but the Krispy Kreme never showed up. So here I am at graduation, and I'm looking for no, I'm just kidding. But in reality, it really was a great experience. I really enjoyed it and learned quite a few things. It really stimulated a lot of good conversations between Tanya and I, and self-reflection, and even between my parents and I. Talking to them, they live in Phoenix, but talking to them on the phone, they knew what I was doing, and were interested to see what the next lesson was, and it brought up some good conversations that aren't over at this point. So it was really good. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not much of this is over at this point. It's an ongoing discussion. Who else would like to share? Come on up, Daniel.
I really enjoyed the sessions that I went to. I wasn't at every session. I gotta admit, getting up at 6 a.m. was a challenge. Some sessions I didn't want to go, and last session I was sick, I wasn't there. But when Mr. Harper came to me and my uncle and asked us to come, at first I was like, 6 a.m., I'm not gonna do that. But I did go, and I'm glad that I went because God showed me things that I really didn't realize. And I know that I speak for William and Michael here when I say that we learn how to be an authentic man of God. And one thing that really stuck with me was when I was filling out my manhood plan, and it said to identify the biggest wound in your life. I put the depravity wound, and Robert Lewis defined the depravity wound, I think it was in session 14.4 or something like that. But the depravity ruin is like not having, that connection with God. And I am a Christian, but I go a lot of days when I feel like God isn't with me, and that I'm going through a hard spell, and I'm like trying to figure out why is God leading me through this. But it's said to put what can you do to get through this challenge, and I put praying, I put talking to God, I put reading God's word, and I put trusting in other Christians, especially older, wiser Christians, older men, and I have the opportunity to do that now. So,
Thank you, Daniel. Others? Greg, we'll do you next. Greg?
Mine is more of a thank you. I got to do this with my son Michael, and I missed quite a few because of my work schedule. I'd be either coming off nights or working that morning, so he went by himself. And there were many mornings he'd be, wait, Dad, it's time to go. But you know what was good is I appreciate the fact that my wife supported that, but more importantly, you men. There was always someone there to say, I'll pick Michael up. I'll bring him home because you can't. You don't want to ask your wife to get up at 5:30 and take your son. She's got other kids to take care of. But the reason he did that and these other young men that came, because there's men here that they can look up to. There's men that they know are authentic. And that means a lot to me because I've got 3 other boys that are coming up. And I've said this before in Sunday school class. It doesn't matter what you think. There's somebody always looking at you, either looking up to you or looking down to you. You need to decide yourself of who you want to be. And I appreciate the fact that these men in this church have given someone that my kids, my sons, and my daughters can look up to. So thank you, men, for doing that for me and my family.
It does take a village, and it's good to have those men they can look up to, and those men like it that they have young guys they can look to when there's a task like putting 300 chairs in a sanctuary. Your boys were rock stars in getting these chairs out, so the tables turn every once in a while. Terry Mason is another example of one who could not always be with us, was not with us a great deal during the Thursday morning sessions because of some things going on in his life, but he was able to get through it with us, and he's going to share with you about that.
Mine is a thank you as well for each of you and Don. After the first 6 weeks of getting up real early, getting there, participating, I knew I wanted to do it, but as you all are aware of scheduling and scheduling conflicts, and then once you make a schedule, how hard it is to fulfill it, I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it. I told Don, shared with him, and he said, hang in there. This is how you can do it. Ryan knows about it, so they pointed me to the Right Now media and to go on there, and Don said, let's finish this. And I said, okay, I'll try, because I wanted to anyway, but thank you for your encouragement. And if you're sitting there thinking you can't get it done 24 weeks, you can. You can do it if you want to. Because I've done it at many different hours of the day and night. And then tell Don or Ryan or Jim, who was our leader at my group. So if you're thinking you can't do it, you're wrong, because you can. Because if I can do it, anybody can do it. So that's what I'm thankful for. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ryan.
Amen. Thanks, Terry. Anybody else want to share? Kenny Munkus, one of my brothers. Kenny was at my table. This has been a spillover, a continuation. Me and Kenny have been meeting together early in the morning for about 3 years now. We've been meeting at 6 o'clock in my office with some other guys, and we took a break from our personal group to join the big group, and I've been blessed like crazy.
Me too. I'm a little nervous, so excuse me. I'm missing my game, so. But perspective, I just want to say, like Bruce, I didn't have a father in my adolescent age, so it's great to hear what a man is from Mr. Lewis. But perspective, to have the group that I had and to listen to the answers to their questions and things. Gave me perspective of how to become a man myself. So a little short and sweet, a little nervous, but there you go.
You could never be a pastor because you're too short and sweet. Actually, you'd be a great pastor. They love you being short and sweet. I've never heard any complaints about a short sermon, not one time. Anybody else want to share anything? Dan Scott. Dan was often the lonely representative at his table. He would come over and join ours sometimes.
Yeah, maybe the one thing worse than a pastor as far as speaking for a long time is a talk show host. So you guys might want to sit back and relax a little bit. I got to tell you this before I get through this, and I'll get through it quickly. But Don, man, what a great guy. What a great example. What a great leader. But he also provided us some moments of comedy. He mentioned one, hitting the bear. The other one that kind of stood out during the session is we found out what happens when you get to the church and you're the first person there and you punch your home security code number in to the church security system. The sheriff comes out and says hello to you at 5:30 in the morning. So we had a good time picking on him over that. For me, I think the biggest thing that I learned was where I need to go now. You know, I was late coming to the Lord. I got saved at 45. And a lot of the stuff we went through in the first half of the session, I had reconciled already. And now this is what God has called me to be as a man, and it's time to start doing it. So I think that's the biggest lesson that I learned. And then a couple of other things real quick. When you talk about authentic men of God and you're sitting here thinking to yourself, do I really need to do that? Is there a more authentic man of God in this church than James Taylor? James Taylor went through this thing with us. And if that is not an example to every man in this room, it should be. And then the other thing is to see those young men back there going through it, and some of them with their fathers. Greg, you should be very proud. You know, churches say that the youth are the future of the church. And on average, most churches only commit 3% of their budget to the youth. I thank God this church invests much more than that in those young people. They invested it in my daughter, and they're investing it in your sons and daughters. And that is something that we all should be very thankful for.
I think that is a great time to lead into our graduation. So the way that's going to work, Don Harper will be up here in the middle, and he'll be calling out the names. Men, I'm going to be over here on this side. I'll have your certificate. We want you to come up these steps. I'll shake your hand, give you a big hug, and give you your certificate. You'll walk across the stage. Bruce will shake your hand, give you a big hug, and give you your key ring. And then we want you to just file down onto the floor, and then as more of us join the group, the line will come further and further to my left. And then once we're through with everybody, we'll have a prayer of celebration and dedication over all of you.
Dan Scott. John Baricki. John Baricki. He didn't think I could pronounce his name right, so. Emerson Scheit. Won't get this back.
Emerson may have had the most important role of the whole group because he made the coffee.
We have a few other men that are not members of our church, but are doing this as a part of the process. Joe, too, is not a member of our church. His name is spelled T-E-W. He is in Fayetteville at this time taking care of two of his parents that are not doing very well. He is finishing the course, and we will get him certified, but he is also a graduate here today. Dennis Williams.
I am so proud of you. Great job. Here you go.
Bobby Lee.
Love you, man.
I don't think Eric is here today. Eric Heidel is a graduate. Is Jan here? Mark Johnston.
He went to be with his mom. He left today to be with his mom.
Oh, Jan was here. She must be in the nursery. How about Skip Flesher? Gant Martin. He is,
It's a small group.
yeah, he's in small group tonight. Ben Archer.
Love you, man. Proud of you.
Bill Benson.
Love you, man. Proud of you.
Appreciate it.
Daniel Perry.
I'm glad you endured, man. Thanks for being there. Love you.
Jerry Holsclaw.
Proud of you. Love you.
Jim Hayes.
Let's give Jim a big round of applause for
Yes,
leading our
John.
men's ministry in
Yeah.
general. Jim's always behind the scenes,
Yes,
leading our
always.
men and leading them well.
Terry Mason.
Love you, brother. Love you. Proud of you. Appreciate you.
Gary Duncan.
Proud of you.
Michael Johnson.
Proud of you, man. Love you. Here you go.
Greg Johnson. Greg just got off work, guys. Just got off work. And Greg, the only name I believe you misspelled is yours, but I will get that fixed, and we'll take care of it,
Josen.
okay?
Love you, man. Proud of you.
God bless you, brother. Love Robert Cross is having a birthday with Davis tonight. Oh, Dr. Boswell was going to be here tonight. Not here? Okay. We'll make sure they get it. Brad Scott is in Florida. Dave West.
Proud of you. Love you.
William Smith. Take him from the back. Okay. Yeah.
Proud of you, William. Love you.
Bill Smith.
Proud of you, Bill. Love you.
Randy Curry.
Another one of my table mates.
Yeah.
Sat to my right hand. Didn't miss a session, I don't think. Love you. Proud of you. Unless he missed the sessions that I missed.
Joe Steele. He's doing small group.
Might be.
Ben Johnson.
Proud of you, Ben. Love you. Thanks.
James Taylor.
That's my table mate right there.
Yes, sir.
Sat at my left hand.
Yeah.
Love you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Kenny Munkus.
You want a different one? Love you, brother. You too. I'm proud of you.
My son Kevin also went through this course, attended a lot of the sessions, but once he got a job up toward exit 113 or whatever it is, was crazy and was not able to be here. So he's finished the course. I got his manhood plan, and we're going from there. Bruce Langston.
Love you.
Dr. Ryan Goodroe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I love it when my pastor attends almost every session. I believe he only missed one, and the last one is mine.
Thank you.
Donald Harper.
Love you, man. Proud of you. I got this. All right, I'm going to have these guys come down and join us. We'll have a word of prayer. Guys, just want to kind of give you the final challenge. Look for ways to use this. Continue to apply those things that we've learned, and then look for some other men that you can build into. Well, stand with us. We'll have a closing prayer.